Um, okay, well, this is the River Runners Oral History Project, and we're here at September 17th, 1994. We're at National Canyon, and we're talking to Tad Nichols now. And this is Lew talking, and Jeff Robertson at the camera, and Karen Underhill listening in. We'll just let this plane die down a little bit. Now, Tad, if you don't mind, if you tell the camera, tell us kind of who you are and a little bit about your background and a little bit about how you came to this river or to river running in general, how you first encountered it.
How I first encountered it.
Well, a little bit about your background first. Where'd you grow up and stuff, and you know, that kind of thing, and just because it kind of puts your answers in perspective. And then how you got drawn into river running or into being outdoors and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense, or is that too vague?
When shall I start?
Anytime.
Well, I grew up in New England, Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's a nice place to be brought up. Nice surroundings. I liked it. But the winters didn't like me, or rather I didn't like the winters. And I was sick all the time. Bronchitis and asthma. So in 1931, my folks sent me out to Arizona to a boys' ranch school. Not a corrective school, but just a school where boys had horses, their own horse, learned to pack mules, make camping trips, and just learn the outdoors, and we studied geology and archaeology, and my whole life changed coming to Arizona from Boston. I picked up an interest in life, interest in many subjects which I didn't have back there, and I date my life as starting when I came to Arizona. The other years were just not so pleasant. Anyway, I graduated from the University of Arizona in geology and archaeology. And when I was in the geology department as a student, I noticed that the textbooks, geology textbooks, illustrations weren't very clear and weren't very good. And having had a course and a study course in photography, I decided to see if I could do better than that. Having a knowledge of what the geology textbooks wanted, I set out to make photographs for them, and it turned out to be very successful, and I'm still getting orders from textbooks for photographs of geological subjects. And one thing led to another, and I got an experience in photography during the World War I, I guess World War II, as a cameraman for the Air Force. We were making training films. And after the war, I started in making films for myself on Indian life of the Southwest, such as how to weave a Navajo rug, how to weave an Apache basket, making films like that. That led to a job with the U.S. Indian Service, in which we were making films, health education for the Indians of the Southwest. Tuberculosis, trachoma, pictures like that. Then in 1950, I had met a woman in California who was making film for television. It was relatively new then. And she had heard about the San Juan River and wanted a cameraman to go with her to help her film the San Juan adventure. And through Glen Canyon, so I went. And we were with Frank Wright, Jim Rigg, Bob Rigg, and Rigg Brothers in San Juan boats. And once I got down into Glen Canyon and those canyons of the San Juan River, boy, I saw scenery that I just couldn't believe it was so beautiful, particularly Glen Canyon. And got to know the Mexican Hat Expeditions crew very well. They said, well, why don't you come with us next spring in the Grand Canyon. And I said, well, that sounds interesting. Maybe I will. The next spring came around, they called me up and said, we're leaving July the 1st. With 4 cataract boats. It's our trip of the year. Come along, so I did. That's how I got started in the Grand Canyon. Then I went in 1951 with them. I took the upper half in 50, 51, lower half in 52. And then the whole river, I think it was in 54. Then when Jim and Bob Rigg built these Chris Craft lake boats, kit boats, designed for sporting on lakes and rivers, they called me up and said, we've just built a couple of boats. We're going to go through the Grand Canyon. Do you want to come? I said, Bob, I said, you really think you could make it? He says, well, we're going to give it a good try, man. And I said, all right, I'll take a chance. He said, all the rest of the old boat people are going, like various of our friends who were with us in previous years, John Mull and Evie Mull from Virginia, and people like that. I helped to bring one of the boats down to Lee's Ferry and launched it. They launched both of the boats there. They'd never been in the water before. They'd never even tested them out. We made an upstream run into Glen Canyon to pick up Frank Wright, who was coming down on one of his San Juan trips. Frank said, sure, I'll get aboard. So we picked him up. He left his trip, picked him up in the Chris Craft, started through and went through in about 3 days, maybe 4. We were much impressed with the boat. They rode like a cork through the waves. We had no trouble except we broke a rudder and bent a prop. But let me tell you, it was the skill of the boatmen who got us through well, and they knew the rapids and how to run them. And that was a really fun trip. And that's also how getting with a bunch of people like that, I mean, I felt they were friends. I felt great and I felt safe. So the following year, maybe it was 2 years later, Jim said, I've got a crew together, I've got passengers together for another trip to the canyon. I said, all right, I'll go with you. And he took the 2 Chris Crafts through that time. Then he turned around, went back to Lee's Ferry. We had a group of scientists that time. Bugsy, whom we met along the river, studying ornithologist, an archaeologist, 2 or 3 others like that. We made it about 10 days studying various things along the way, and that was fun. Something like this trip. Then my wife wanted to go, and in 1967 we went with Don Harris, Jack Brennan, 2 rubber boats. Had a fine trip, a bunch of people from Tucson, had a great trip. And in 68, the year before the Powell Centennial, Eddie McKee from Denver called up and said, we're making a film for the Powell Centennial, a little story of Powell's trip. Would you like to be one of the photographers? And I said, sure. So in order to get pictures in the canyon, I joined up with Gene Shoemaker and his crew in 4 or 5, I guess there were 21 or 22-foot rubber boats. And they came down through the upper half shooting footage for the Powell film.
Were they that big?
Beg pardon?
The rafts, seems like you said they were 10 men. Were they Army 10
Maybe they were
men?
10. Maybe they were something like the ones that just came by.
Well, those, I think they're more like 16 or 17.
16, 17.
Does that
foot.
seem right? Or
Yeah, that seems right.
uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure that, I can't remember the exact dimensions. But that was a fun trip. You know, I like working trips. Pleasure trips are fun too, but I also like something with an objective. And this trip has it. That trip had it. So my last trip was in 68. shooting the power picture.
How's it
Great.
going?
Hey Tad, what you catching with that big old mic?
What's that?
What you catching with this thing?
Fishbowl.
I'm not talking very well.
No,
Oh, yeah?
you're talking great. You're doing just fine.
I imagine you got more stories than they have tape.
No, he just wanted to know how the hell I got into river running. And I was trying to explain how I got into the canyon in the beginning.
I think that's the most lucid resume I've yet heard on
Really?
this project. Yeah, I do.
Break on the camera.
What, see this fossil?
Well, the fluting on there looks like it might be a piece of brachiopods.
That's what I was thinking.
They get brachiopods and horn corals and stuff like that in there.
Is he at that stage in your life where you're still a teenage boy, or have you gone past that?
Who, me?
Yeah, and you're...
Mentally, I'm teenage. By the way, I got up those rocks yesterday guys had to help me up at Havasu. Oh, that was embarrassing. I thought I could do it, but I couldn't quite. I haven't had enough exercise.
I think you've gotten stronger as the trip's gone on.
I know I have. I feel so much better. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, I got a better mental attitude. I'm a better person for this trip. Let me tell you.
You really
I
mean
really
that?
am.
And why would that be?
Why? I don't know. I've just been given new life, and I feel like I've been able to do more than I realized I could do. And that's all I can say.
I know the feeling.
Break.
Yeah, let's take a little break. Lew, we're going to have a group discussion. Do you want to try to record that and get in on that?
When? What's the deal on
Well,
that?
I'd like to, I was thinking maybe in a half an hour. I'm going to go down there, get people packing up, moving along. Richard and Kenton have a shot they want to do, but I'd like all the boats to leave together. Martin's
Ready
got
to
his
go.
boat together. He's ready to go. The weather's cool. It might be storming later tonight, so I'd like to get moving downstream and get plenty of time to camp if people do have to set up tents. And so, just to, I was thinking of staying here longer because of the shade, but since it's cool out there,
Might as well
if we
go.
can get moving, it's about 11 now. If
11 o'clock now.
maybe if you can talk to Tad for another, till 11:30 or so.
Great.
Up to these
And
guys.
then I'm sure you'll keep going, but just kind of cut it off, and we'll get everybody going on that. If you can kind of,
Yeah.
take just, and then we'll have some time for that while people are having their lunch, sit around, talk,
Group
and
discussion
then
down there.
then we
Yeah.
can get going downstream.
Sounds good. And I think, if ML wants to go, and that cataract boat's ready to go, I can just,
Yeah. Oh, he'd be fine.
or I can trade, or if you
Yeah,
want
I
to go
could
with
go
him,
down with him.
all that.
It's just kind of keeping things moving as a group too. Instead of Kenton wants to do his shot with Richard, you guys are doing your thing.
Right.
So instead of everybody starting fracturing, if we can just kind of keep it moving as a group like we did kind of yesterday, it makes it. We're a group down here and do it that way. So hate to put a time limit on all your stories here, Tad, but
I haven't got
maybe
much
if
to
you
say.
can, maybe you can pick out another half dozen to go through, and then
him. He's asking the questions.
and then we can get maybe tonight or tomorrow morning down there around lava. Let you gear up and get you back on it. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds good. So
I
we'll be
hate to
down
put-
there 11:30.
Yeah, I hate to put time on you, but
No,
we'll
no,
just-
we got to do it if we're gonna do it.
okay.
We're doing good here.
Okay. I'm gonna.
Uh,
Are you rolling again?
so yeah, we're rolling.
Is
Now let's see.
Well, I want to say one more thing.
Okay.
That first trip with Frank Wright down San Juan River and into Glen Canyon, I was so intrigued with Glen Canyon and the beauty of it that for the next at least 7 or 8 years, I borrowed, begged, or stole a boat of some kind. And almost every summer, went down through Glen Canyon, each year exploring a different side canyon. each one was different, and each one was extraordinary. And I had just never really thought such a place in the world existed. We took as many photographs as we could. We took a lot of color stereo pictures, which have turned out to be invaluable and simply marvelous. You look at those now and it almost brings tears to your eyes to see this stuff. And so now, and even when the lake started to fill up, we got a powerboat and went in every place that we could where we had not been able to get very far in previous years along the river. So we got added footage, added pictures. I took no movies, just black and white and still and color slides. I was so busy with movies for Frank Wright in the years 51 and 52 and 53, 51, 52, and 52, that I didn't have too much chance to enjoy the canyon. This trip, I have sat back and really looked and just soaked the place up. I've enjoyed it immensely, just watching these beautiful rock formations come by, and they're just almost mind-blowing. These cliffs, tier after tier, and buttresses and terraces like the old Inca terraces in Peru, where they would make agricultural terraces. I saw similar ones down here. And this is grand. This is a magnificent trip, and I've been able to enjoy it, the country, much more than I ever have in any trip before. So that's why I appreciate this so much, and all the great people on it. That's my statement for your trip.
Okay. Well, that's outstanding.
It's a real privilege to have come along on this trip.
Well, I understand this was your idea.
I told Kenton I wanted to go once more. Somehow. And I said, got a few friends that would be kind of fun to go with. He said, well, let's give it some serious thought. And he did, and it happened. Thanks to Kenton and Diane.
Yeah. That Kenton, he's that way.
Yeah.
When he gets locked onto a goal,
Yeah.
you better get out of the way.
Yeah.
I mean, he has this uncanny way where he says, okay, we're going to do this. He will make it happen.
I wanted to go on this so badly. I'd had some bad asthma, which has occurred for years and years. I had none, but there were certain pollens or something in Tucson that triggered it off again. And plus the hot weather in Tucson, mornings, you had to get up and walk at 5:30, or else it was too damn hot to walk otherwise. So I didn't get in enough exercise before this trip. Really, I should have gotten up in the mountains and done some hiking. And that's why I was a bit out of shape when we started, but I'm getting back in shape now and enjoying it much more. Thanks to the help. Everybody has helped me on this trip. I just can't believe it, how much help they've given me. They're wonderful.
Well, you're looking pretty chipper.
Well, I'm feeling chipper. I'm not feeling 81, damn it. I refuse to recognize that. I don't believe it.
Well, it happens pretty quick, doesn't it?
You're not kidding. Okay, what else should we talk about?
Well, we might as well keep the focus, well, for right now, let's just talk about the focus of this trip. Would you maybe describe a little bit of the process? Okay, when it comes to how this trip came to be, my understanding is you told Kenton that you wanted to go again, and he said, well, I'll give it some thought. I'll see if I can get it wormed around some way to where I can make that happen. And then he did. Well, now how did he manage to do that?
How did he?
Yeah. I guess I'm looking for a description of how this trip evolved and what its stated mission is, and how well we've stuck to that. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Well, I think we formulated some of the plan for the trip through Bob Webb, who's down in Tucson, and I had, quite a few meetings with him. I was up on Tumamoc Hill frequently. We just sat one time and talked it over each time. And said, well, we think we can make it go, and he had certain objectives. And I thought his plan was very good to get these people together to try and recollect from personal experience. You know, that's the purpose of the trip. And how they got all these people together, I don't know, but that was mostly, I guess, Diane's work and Bob Webb's work. Together, the folks together. And then there's how the logistics must have come through OARS and Kenton and this whole thing. Anyway, somehow it came to be. And I didn't have too much to do with it, except suggestions to Bob Webb. And then he got it going.
Let's talk a little bit about photo matching as a science and as a tool for understanding what's going on. And I think you're an interesting person to talk to about that by virtue of the fact that you were with Gene Shoemaker,
Yes.
who did the first photo match, and that you're such a good photographer yourself.
Well, I had done photo matching before that even, down in the Pinacati lava fields, northern Sonora. We took Hornaday's book, which was called Campfires on Desert and Lava, which was a story of the first expedition into the Pinacatis in 1909, collecting for the American Museum in the Carnegie. We took their book, we made Polaroid pictures of the photographs in their book and tried to follow their route through the Pinacatis, matching their photographs on that trip. And we found the very rock like we do now by matching the horizon line and some of the foreground, but principally we used the horizon to match the pretty much the approximate site. And we took those, very interesting to see, principally to notice the changes in vegetation. And at that time, Ray Turner was very interested in this. And he was interested in knowing how the vegetation changes, whether they're more saguaro cactus, less saguaros, more palo verdes or less palo verdes, and other things like that. And through the matching of these pictures, and through his matching in subsequent years, I think our first match was in about 1960. So he'd been doing that down through the years now. So I'd had a little experience in that. And when I came along with Gene, we were shooting film for the Powell Centennial picture, which was to be used during the centennial year of Major Powell's trip. And I was taking part of that through the Grand Canyon, and we took part of that along the rim with Eddie McKee and others. So I was just merely watching how Shoemaker did his work, and his technique and Larry Stevens, I think, was along on that, others. But I was concerned mainly of making footage for the film on that trip.
I'm just waiting for this plane to go by a little bit. What?
Huh?
Go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt.
As I say, I was in these 1951 and 52 trips in the cataract boats. Frank Wright and Jim wanted a film that they could use to publicize their trips and show the audiences during the winter. And there again, I had to do filming. So I never made very many observations of the rapids themselves. I wasn't really interested in them. That wasn't my focus. But I do remember some of the sandbanks, some of the places we camped. And I took still pictures along with the movies. So the only thing I really could contribute on this trip, not having any memory of exactly how the rapids looked, was the conditions of where we camped. And that seems to be that all I can recall.
Well, which is real important. That's really germane.
Yeah.
What is your impression of the overall change? How has the place changed, and if so, how? What's different, and what isn't different? What's the same?
The main change is the lack of beautiful sandbars. The one there at Earl's Chasm, when we stopped in '67, we had 2 big boats, 10, 12, maybe 15, about 12, 13 people. Got them all spread out there on that bar, even downriver ways. Now there's no sand even you can't even camp there. Changes like that.
That's fairly common in your
Yeah.
I mean, throughout the canyon.
Tapeats Creek had a much bigger bar. And I think, to me, I see that as the principal change.
Are we turning out to have photographic evidence of all that?
Do we have it?
Yeah.
I have some, which I haven't given to Bob Webb yet. The ones we took at Earl's Chasm, people all camped out along the beach there, and some others which I found before I came on the trip. My filing system is not the best, and when I visited Ansel Adams one time in California, I took his workshop, his photographic workshop. He invited me up to his house. And he went into a closet looking for some negatives, and he came out with a shoebox. And here he had negatives in a shoebox. I said, well, I feel right at home, because I sure do myself. And that's part of I'm disorganized. I'm not really organized like I should be at home. You know, you have too much to do. You haven't got time to file it properly and label it. Well, I'm just that way. That's my nature, I guess. I'm trying to reform. I may do better from now on. So I haven't taken many pictures on this trip. I've enjoyed it.
Well, I sure think that this is I've viewed the science from afar for a long time, and my impression of the photo matching project is that it's one of the most valuable you could possibly do.
I think it's fascinating. I just love to do that.
Well, it was like Gene Shoemaker said, the pictures don't lie.
Well, I'm sorry that I haven't been able to come up with enough in the short time which I had before I came along, because it seems to me I had interruptions all the time, to be able to find enough to give to Bob to print, to bring along with him. And I'm sure I have more. But what I did have, he's been able to use, and it's been very interesting to see. Very, very interesting to see the change. And I realize the value of matching early photographs. It's important. It's part of the story. So, let me see. What else is significant?
Let's go back to Glen Canyon and the dam. How were you involved in the politics and stuff, and how'd you feel about it when you heard about the dam and like that, and how do you feel about it now?
No, I wasn't involved in the politics. I kept track of it to a certain extent, because at the time there was quite a controversy over building a dam in Dinosaur National Park that would flood out Dinosaur National Park. You're flooding out an existing park. And that, to me, and to a lot of people, of course, was unthinkable. And tragic destruction. And the fight over the dinosaur resulted in crashing the bill to build a dam that would flood Dinosaur. And the momentum for dam building was growing and growing. Reclamation, of course, was pushing it. Reclamation had to stay in business. It's a business of building dams. We gained Dinosaur Park, but we lost Glen Canyon, and Glen Canyon was a dozen dinosaurs. The most unique place I've ever seen, and probably the most unique place in the world, and if it had been any place else, it would have been saved and been a monument or a park. But the stupidity, I won't say stupidity of people, I would say just a lack of knowledge. And the greediness of the Bureau of Reclamation to build a dam as high as they possibly could, which resulted in the flooding of an existing national monument, which was Rainbow Bridge. And if they hadn't been so greedy, they could have kept the dam down 20 feet. What's 20 feet and 700? Kept the water out of Rainbow Bridge. I think that alone was inexcusable. And
well, was that reclamation or was that the water boys?
I think it was reclamation. Reclamation is in the business of building dams, and they wanted to build as big a one as they could. See how much water they could store. That may not be the situation, but it sounds like it. It was political, the whole thing.
Well, why was there such a thrust? Why did the building of the dams go over so well then? Why was it so acceptable?
To tell you the truth, I don't know really why it was so acceptable, but it just suddenly seemed that, I mean, to me, it just seemed to suddenly happen quickly, without much discussion, without much information that the public could react upon, and possibly because I was traveling overseas at that time, I couldn't follow the process of what happened. When we got back from some trip, all of a sudden the Glen Canyon Dam bill had been signed. And I don't think there was enough opposition to it. The opposition wasn't strong enough, not enough people were behind it. And as Brower said, it was a place that few people knew, and who cared? They were building another dam. They didn't realize what they were losing. I couldn't do anything about it. Very few people could. There were only a handful of people at that time who really had gone through there, knew about it. They knew the beauty, but they couldn't speak up. Don't get me started on this.
Well, that's okay.
I don't know any more than that.
What do you think about the Bureau now as opposed to the Bureau then? Has it changed along with the river and stuff, or not? And I'm not looking for some kind of sugar-coated deal. I'm looking for something true to just document.
You mean, what do I think about the Bureau?
Yeah. I mean, in light of the fact that we're here doing this trip, and I mean, I wonder what good will come of that.
What will come of this trip?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what will come of this trip, politically or otherwise. I know what will come of it will be a great advancement to the work that you people and Bob Webb and all the other scientists on the trip are doing. But I think the public opinion now is such that the Bureau of Reclamation couldn't get away with building dams in Grand Canyon, or possibly any place else that would flood out anything significant. And I don't think today it could be done. I think at that time it just wasn't, there wasn't enough public sentiment, people who knew very much about what was going to happen. That's just a real amateur's viewpoint, my viewpoint, from a person who didn't follow it too closely. So, I mean, all of a sudden the thing happened. When it was I felt pretty bad about it, along with a lot of other people. But I decided that as long as they were building it, I was going to see as much as I could before the lake filled up. And I've had some enjoyable times on the lake as the lake was filling. I have to admit that. I had my own boat, went everywhere each year. Now I don't go back because there's nothing more to see. Places like Cathedral of the Desert, and there, Cathedral Canyon, Twilight Canyon, we had the biggest amphitheaters in there you could possibly imagine. That would seat thousands of people. And it even had a podium where you could put a whole orchestra in this place. That's one spot. There were many spots in Glen Canyon that if alone had been any place else would have been some kind of a preserved monument. Many of them. Glen Canyon had many. But that's my feeling. That's what I saw. I don't know really much more. I'm not politically oriented on this.
Well, you said that this trip's made you feel like a new man, and
It has.
well, and that you've never, that you've made a special connection here on this thing, and I wonder what that is. What is it about this stuff that? Why is it so important?
Well,
Why do we
the
need
people? The people here have inspired me. They've helped me along. I realize my infirmity. I wish I was better. My determination to get better has been such that I am walking much better now than when I first started. I'm enjoying it more. It's just all you folks have done it for me. That's the best I can say, Lew.
Well, you said you've seen I'm going to let you off the hook here in a minute, but you said earlier that you got to look at the canyon like
Yes.
you never had the opportunity to before.
Because I was busy with something else.
And I'm wondering, what have you seen, with that opportunity? What is it that you see, and what effect does that have? That's kind of cosmic, but maybe.
Well, I've been able to follow this guide, and it has a map of the geological sequences and something about the river. I've been able to recognize the different formations as we go along, which I enjoy doing. And just to look at this scenery. I mean, it must be some of the most incredible on earth. It just surrounds you, and you can. I just enjoy each bend in the canyon, just because I'm here, because I love the canyon. I mean, that really describes it. And I'm just enjoying it more. Sitting back and relaxing, taking it all in. Listening to the discussions of the rapids and all of that.
I think we're going to have to, just for Lester, I want to come and see you in Tucson.
Let's make a break here.
Okay. There's so much more that I want to hear about. Gosh, I'd love to hear about those Chris Craft trips. Katie Lee talks about you a lot, and it sounds like, and
Well,
I wish we had time to visit about that. Did they build those boats, or the Chris Crafts? You said they had put them in the water. Did they build them themselves?
yes, they were kit boats.
Aha.
And since the rig boys can do anything, in my opinion, Jim Rigg was a natural-born airplane pilot, and he had the same natural reactions when he was a boatman. And when we caught a piece of driftwood in the propeller at the head of the rapid, I didn't know what had happened. The engine just suddenly stopped. We were a couple hundred yards from the head of the rapid. Before I knew it, Jim was over the back of the boat in the water. He'd removed the piece of driftwood that had jammed in the propeller. We were back on board, and just as we hit the head of the rapid, and went through beautifully. He was that kind of a person. And he loved the canyon so much that I have a movie of him standing up in the cockpit, 1 foot on the steering wheel, steering with his foot, holding on to the windshield, singing to the top of his voice as we went down through some of the rapids. He was just with it. He was you could see his enjoyment in what he was doing. I even remember, I think I could remember some of the songs he was singing.
What were they?
One I think was a hymn, religious hymn. I'm trying to remember it right now, but I can't quite do it. It was one that was called "With Arms Wide Open, the Lord Be With Us," or something like that as we go along. I'll think of it in a minute. Anyhow, he had a beautiful voice and he loved to sing. And Jim and Bob and their brother Jack, who was with us on that first Chris-Craft run, they sang the Neville's River song beautifully together, the 3 of them. And it was the tune. Somebody told me what the tune was. I've forgotten now. It's a Western tune.
Ghost Riders in the Sky?
Ghost Riders in the Sky, that's it. I don't know who composed the words, but that song just seemed to fit the canyons. And I remember they sang it at the dedication of the plaque to Norm and Joan, and not Doris was his wife, there at the bridge at Marble Canyon, when Barry Goldwater dedicated the plaque. Frank Maslin was down there to comfort the girls, and the boys sang that song there, and it just brought tears to your eyes. It was just so beautiful. I don't remember what year that was, but I have a photograph of it. Little things like that I remember.
Yeah, Joni said that brought tears to their eyes too.
Oh yeah, they were really sobbing. Fish Eyes Maslin was comforting them and other people. It was quite an emotional experience.
And you have movies of Jim Rigg doing that.
I didn't have time to get them together. But I want to assemble, I took one whole film of the Chris-Craft run, as much as I could. Then we have a whole film on the upper half, 51, which I was taking for Mexican Hat expeditions. Then we filmed some on the lower half, but I don't know how much footage I've got on that. But I wanted to get those 2 together, at least, and better get it on tape, so that Brother Webb can do what he wants to. And some people want to dupe.
Well,
let's cut.
What questions? Can you guys think of anything? We just gotta sit down with you again. Karen, Jeff, you think of anything right now that there? I can think of a lot too. That was incredible. I think I figured out the angle for this thing, for the piece that we'll just put together. I want to really play off this photo matching angle. You know how we're matching photos of the place?
Oh yeah.
I want to, and I'm going to talk to the group about this. What I'd like to do is use whatever, stuff like your old movies and stills and what other people have of those early trips, and really play off the angle of matching photos and movies of you guys, of those times then compared to this trip now. And I think there's a way that we can just really ride that horse and kind of make this thing. I don't know. I think we can make something kind of good with it.
Bob Webb notified me about what he wanted too late. I was too busy trying to get ready for this trip. I didn't get everything.
Well,
and I know I have a lot of things that you fellas could use.
Well, we'll
and
track
this fall,
down.
I'm going to dig them out.
Well, if it's okay, I'd like to come bug you in Tucson. If we don't, and maybe sit you down again now.
Well,
I don't know if that's all right or not.
I need some bugging. There's no doubt about that. And I'm embarrassed right now about my house in Tucson because it's in such a mess. and stuff is strewn everywhere, and I haven't had time to pick it up, and I hate to have anybody come and see me until I'm more or less ready for it.
Well, that's okay. or if you do you ever get to Flag or Phoenix or?
Well, yes, I like to go to Flag.
Well, I think we need to just make a date to.
Where is your home?
I live in Prescott.
Oh, you're in Prescott. That's right. That's right.
Me and Jeff.
That wouldn't be hard for me to get to.
Well, that'd be fine too.
I'd rather come up there.
I just have the feeling that we're going to have to follow up on this stuff here.
Well,
I guess
I'm all for this matching business. I think it's an extraordinary good thing to do.
Yeah, I think we do.
And a very good source of information.
I think we'll end up coming up with something kind of good.
This break, huh?
Yeah.
Lew, was that all right?
I thought it was great. I thought it was wonderful. And you know, I think like when it comes to cutting a piece together, you know, well, I was really moved by your description of Jim Rig and stuff, driving the boat and singing. I mean, if you have a shot of that, you know, that's the kind of thing where, you know, I'd cut that in the midst of, you know, in the midst of that little piece,
yeah.
And I think that'd say something. Maybe actually, are you still going? You know, let's do one other thing. Just if there is a word, maybe just a word about Bob, just for him. If there is something that comes to mind, you know, regarding your memory of him on those trips. And I don't know, I don't want it to be hokey or anything.
Bob was, I rode with Bob in the cataract boats, on my first trip in '51. The trips always left on July the 1st to take advantage of spring runoff. And Frank Wright, Jim, and Pat Riley were the other boatmen. But they told me I'd like to ride with Bob, and I said that turned out very well. He sort of followed in a way in his big brother's footsteps. He once told me, he said, I've learned so much from Brother Jim. He taught me to fly a plane. He's taught me everything I knew about the river. He's taught me things about life, philosophy, and subjects in general which have benefited me. And he just adored Jim, and they both got along so well together. And Bob's been a lifelong friend ever since. He wasn't the, what shall we say, outgoing character that Jim was, but he was a little more quiet, but just as capable, I'm sure. And he's turned out to be a very good pal for me. Because I remember Jim was in here. I keep telling Bob, I miss Jim so much. And he said, well, how about me? He says, nobody misses him more than I do. And Jim was such a wonderful, wonderful character, so capable and everything. And I think Bob is too. The whole bunch was that way. Frank Wright was a good riverman. He could do anything. Repair anything, make anything. All these guys were so extraordinarily resourceful, and you just counted on them of being able to do anything in case something went wrong. And they were there, and they knew how to handle it. That's the bunch of guys it was. And you respect them very highly. I respect Jim, Bob, Frank, a whole bunch. How could you find any better guys?
Okay.
Permanent break.
Cut.
Was that a decent description?
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was outstanding. Were you up there when he was talking about, when Bob was talking about the speed run? Did you get in on that when he talked about how Jim let him run lava because he hadn't run it before and all that stuff? That, you know, that's one of the more moving things I've heard on this trip.
Well, that's typical.
Yeah. All right, this time we really mean it.